its entirely new system of government. Today, city leaders, both incoming and outgoing, met with reporters to talk about how the transition is going and potential challenges ahead. It's our big story tonight. Under the new government, city council membership more than doubles from 5 to 12, and council members will no longer run city bureaus. That's up to the new city administrator and his deputies, and that person will be hired by the new mayor. So yeah, a lot of new is coming fast, and there's a lot that could go wrong, but so far city leaders say everything is on track, including the current city administrator. The incoming mayor now has an office in the city building, and he says he's been included in many meetings and briefings as he gets up to speed. Pat Doris brings us an update.
Keith Wilson is an outsider who will play a critical role in running Oregon's largest city. Under the new form of government, the mayor and city administrator will direct city employees in day-to-day duties with the help of deputy administrators. City council members will act as the legislative branch and control budgets. Wilson was asked whether he's worried city councilors, many of whom are progressive in their politics, would go along with his plan to end unsheltered homelessness in 1 year and ban street camping.
I've had 7 meetings with the 12 so far, long meetings, so we can develop a relationship, and also I can gain an idea of what their ideals, their ideology. Not one of them had said that leaving Portlanders on the street is something that they want to do or that they accept. It's only been positive, and in fact, many of them said, we're behind you 100%, let's go, onward.
When it comes to the internal running of the city, Portland switched over to deputy city administrators controlling bureaus instead of politicians controlling them this past July. It was to work out any problems before the legal switch to that system takes effect January 1st. Portland's current mayor, Ted Wheeler, supported that move and said it's going well.
We're farther along than I thought we would be at this point in the transition process. It has gone better than I expected, with fewer hitches than I expected, and with more support both internal to our organization and externally in the community.
Members of the new city council will be sworn in December 18th. As the end of the year approaches, Wilson, who owns Titan Freight Systems, has made a major decision on where he will focus his attention.
And I will be departing from Titan as its CEO. And what that looks like is a host of different options that I have. So we're going to be reducing. Being the mayor of Portland is a full-time job and then some. And we are not going to compromise this by having a foot in both worlds.
Pat's with me now. I know this new system is supposed to be more efficient. What did the incoming mayor have to say about that?
Well, he hopes it's a way to avoid drastic budget cuts next year. In fact, he's already getting tours and looking around at efficiencies and thinking about ways that the city can save money. In fact, here, take a listen.
I had the great pleasure of being with City Fleet on Tuesday, working with Maddie. So what we have now, Pat, is we have an opportunity to look horizontally throughout the entire city and look at all the underutilized equipment. And she was just explaining dozens upon dozens of vehicles that were used in one bureau but not accessed in another, that will be underutilized, in some cases vehicles moving less than 80 miles per month. She finds this as an opportunity, as do I, as do the mayor and Michael Jordan, that we can take those savings, reduce that, and lower expenses by millions of dollars, allowing us to keep full-time employees. That's our absolute goal, is to not lose any staff.
Okay, Pat, and they also talked about what, if any, impact the Trump administration could have on the city in the new year, right?
Right, Evan. I thought that was interesting because a lot of people are kind of wondering that as the Trump administration gets ready to take over. And one of the concerns is that, you know, Oregon's a sanctuary state, Portland's a sanctuary city and very progressive, and the incoming administration kind of disagrees with some of those positions. So the question was whether the Trump administration could try to punish the city of Portland by withholding federal funding. Here's what the interim city administrator had to say about that.
We've been through this before. It's not a brand new thing, right? We've been through a Trump administration. We know that there were tensions, and some of that tension did revolve around grant funding that comes from the federal government to some of our bureaus. We came through that the last cycle just fine.
So Michael Jordan does not sound too concerned there. We'll see if that sticks. Thank you, Pat. Today, a tsunami warning caused evacuations along the southern Oregon coast after a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck off the northern coast of California. That warning, the tsunami warning, was canceled shortly after it was made, but there was a tense 45 minutes or so, especially as people got their warnings on their phones and other devices. In the end, there was no tsunami and big waves did not reach the shore, but experts say a 7.0 earthquake is just about the break point for a tsunami threat, and emergency officials didn't want to take any chances. We talked with Diego Melgar, director of the Cascadia Region Earthquake Center at the University of Oregon, about just how fast a decision needs to be made at the Tsunami Warning Center up in Alaska.
An alarm goes off that says something is happening, and they have to look at the seismic data that's coming in, and inside of 2 to 3 minutes, which is not a lot of time, all they know is a dot on the map of where the earthquake is. They know the rough magnitude, which was about 7.3 very early on, and they know it's really close to the coast, and they have to make a split-second decision to push a button to send an alert or not send an alert. And that's a really difficult place to be in because you know the tsunami takes about 10-15 minutes to get to shore, so you really can't waste any time. If you pay attention to what goes on in the world with big tsunamis, it's terrifying. And so I would rather know. And so I'm glad that somebody is awake at the wheel, willing to press that button that says, big earthquake, please evacuate our beaches. I think they made the right call.
Any tsunami warning brings to mind the threat of the big one, a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake that could severely impact the Oregon coast. The 2011 tsunami that devastated Japan is one example that researchers used to prepare for the big one. We even saw waves from that Japan tsunami reach Oregon in 2011. So is today's tsunami a warning sign or a bigger threat of something to come?
These smaller events, I know it feels big to people, magnitude 7. It's smaller than the big one we're expecting in the Pacific Northwest. These small events most frequently do not foretell that the bigger one is coming. There's always a small chance that this small one is of what we call a foreshock. There's always a small chance of that. But throughout history, most frequently, these magnitude 7s are not followed by a bigger event.
Which is encouraging to hear, of course. Emergency officials say today's scare is a great reminder to make sure you have a plan for where and how you'd get to safety in a tsunami, have a kit ready to go, and subscribe to emergency alerts. And when it comes to monitoring the earthquakes in our region, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network has spent the last decade expanding their array of seismometers. Back in 2014, the USGS had 240 seismometers, and they set a goal of 600 seismometers needed to properly cover the Northwest. Now, the USGS has about 700.
The shaking from that epicenter is going to hit a station sooner if there's more stations. If we only have a handful of stations, that seismic wave may have to travel dozens of miles before it's detected, which eliminates several seconds of potential extra warning.
3 stations are needed to triangulate which direction the shaking is coming from. The closer they are together, the more accurate the reading. But there is one problem with our seismic network that today's scare certainly highlights. All of those nearly 700 seismometers are on land. Scientists are working to add underwater stations off of Oregon's coast, but not until 2026. They'll be plugged in using underwater cables to further improve early warnings to communities along the coast. To Clackamas County now, and an update to a story that we've covered for years. A former doctor accused of sexually abusing nearly 200 women and children who were his patients. David Farley has not been criminally charged, but now the Clackamas County District Attorney wants the Oregon Department of Justice to step in. The DA claims his office has encountered, quote, significant legal and factual difficulties advancing prosecution, and that the deeply troubling allegations warrant a second review. Alma McCarty explains.
It's been a living nightmare for the women and children that we represent.
It's been more than 4 years since Dr. David Farley abruptly retired from his Westland practice amid widespread accusations of sexual abuse. 4 years since his medical license was revoked. And 4 years since his alleged victims first filed a lawsuit. Courtney Tom is one of their attorneys.
And that was as a result of the local police department, Westland PD, and the local prosecutor not listening. They were dismissed. They weren't believed. They were told, he's a doctor. This is going to be difficult. We can't do anything for you.
Then, a Clackamas County grand jury declined to indict Farley on criminal charges 2 years ago.
Back in 2022, when it became very clear to anyone paying attention that the DA's office was not protecting and serving as they took the oath to do, that's when a number of survivors banded together and sent a letter to the Oregon Attorney General's office, basically asking them to intervene.
And the DOJ confirms they have been reviewing the case for some time. Then this week, Clackamas County DA John Wentworth penned his own letter to the Attorney General, asking the DOJ to handle the continued investigation and prosecution of the former doctor. In it, writing, "I believe a comprehensive review by your office, coupled with the trust you have developed with the plaintiffs' attorneys and their clients, may provide the opportunity needed to move forward." Tom and her clients believe this request comes a few years too late.
If you, as a prosecutor, have any moment of doubt that your office can properly prosecute a pedophile, a sexual abuser, someone who's touching sexually his patients, you seek out immediately. You seek out the assistance of the state attorney general's office. You don't do it, 4 years later.
However, her team remains hopeful that the AG's review of the criminal case will lead to justice.
At the end of the day, the goal here for everybody involved, including the survivors, is for the truth to come out.
Alma McCarty, KGW News.
We have not yet heard back from the attorney representing Farley. A spokesperson for the DOJ says the department will continue its review of the case, and if there's a, quote, basis for prosecution, the DOJ will handle that. Meanwhile, more than 170 plaintiffs have signed on to a civil lawsuit against Farley that's scheduled to go to trial in 2026. Up next on the story, Washington State's budget looks dire over the next few years, and lawmakers in Olympia will be looking at ways to fix it, including introducing new taxes. A conversation with the leaders of the House and Senate in Olympia as a historic session looms when the story returns. We've spent a lot of time talking about what to expect from Oregon lawmakers in Salem when their session begins late next month. But now let's turn our attention to Washington. When lawmakers return to Olympia next month, history will be made in several ways. When it comes to what that could mean for you, don't be surprised if talk of new taxes starts making headlines. Drew Mickelson explains.
When legislators return to Olympia next month, they'll be facing an estimated $12 billion budget shortfall over the next 4 years, highest in state history. And the top two legislators here at the Capitol next session are used to making some history.
Well, I think the voters gave us some pretty clear direction about what they're looking for.
Incoming Senate Majority Leader Jamie Peterson.
My highest priority is going to be to protect Washington's way of life.
And returning Speaker of the House Lori Jenkins are no strangers to Olympia.
I think it's a mistake to kind of say kids will be kids.
Jenkins was elected to the House in 2010, Peterson in 2006.
Marriage is the word that our society uses to describe a committed, lifelong relationship.
The Democrats proudly worked together in 2012, getting the marriage equity law passed.
It is signed.
And they're about to make history again. When legislators return to Olympia, Jenkins and Peterson will be the first openly gay members to lead their respective chambers.
To me, the biggest great thing about it is it says that the place and the space is opening up and is there for everybody, for every community to be represented.
For young people, this is a really perilous time. For young queer people, it's a really perilous time. And it makes a difference to feel like the whole world isn't just going south on them.
The legislative leaders say they'll be following the voters' lead when looking to solve the state's double-digit billion-dollar budget shortfall. Last month, Washington voters rejected initiatives that would have repealed a climate law blamed for rising gas prices and a capital gains tax on the state's top investment earners. So as school districts demand more state funding and culvert and road construction projects get costlier, these legislative leaders say they are confident voters would support raising new taxes to bridge the budget gap.
The voters gave us clues about where we should do that. We should be taxing rich people and companies that can afford to pay more and that fairly should be paying more to support the services that we all benefit from as a community.
There will be an argument that that was a mandate on the past, but you're saying, hey, that's a sign that we should continue on this direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, certainly that's the most recent data we have from voters, right? Is the election results.
The national election results have Jenkins and Peterson concerned and preparing for a second Trump administration.
Right now, what we're doing is we're going through Project 2025, looking at the projections there of what the other Washington might want to do, and being proactive in our work to make sure that we can stop bad things from happening here and keep the good things that we're doing going.
Both legislators said they will be looking at state agencies to see if there are any areas that could be cut. So along with new taxes, that will be something to watch for when lawmakers return to Olympia on January 13th. Oregon's Department of State Land says there are hundreds of abandoned boats and other vessels in waterways. Many of them are hazardous for a variety of reasons. A large barge that falls into that category was recently pulled out of the Columbia River. Celine Stevens brings us an up-close look at what's left of the dredge Herb Anderson and the costly task ahead.
It became evident that without any kind of state action soon, it could end up being a catastrophic problem.
A dredging vessel left abandoned outside the Rainier community for over a decade. A private owner bought it, but wasn't able to keep up with maintenance, and it became an environmental hazard.
Not only was it a navigation hazard, it sat in that area for a very long time, and there's also petroleum products on board that were posing a threat to the river.
After being in contact with the owner for years to maintain the vessel and getting nowhere, the Oregon Department of State Lands jumped in to remove it at the end of November. It's now at this dismantling facility, and it comes with a hefty price tag.
We project it'll cost just over $1 million, depending on the hazardous materials you find, PCBs, lead paint, asbestos, things like that. It can elevate the price quite a bit.
The owner is liable, and the Oregon Department of State Lands says it will use any legal means to get it paid for. Until then, the project is being funded by Oregon's Abandoned and Derelict Vessel Removal Fund. The vessel, which is around 130 feet long, once had great importance before it retired over 20 years ago. This is the dredge Herb Anderson once used for general channel dredging and collecting debris and ash after the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Now it's sitting right here on this dry dock in North Portland and will be dismantled this month.
As soon as all the paint is scraped off and disposed of properly, and all of the flammable liquids and all of the asbestos and everything has been removed, we use a big wire saw, and we will start by taking the big gantry off first.
Once the rest is tested for toxic materials and then cut apart and removed, what's left of the dredge heads to a recycling facility. Celine Stevens, KGW News.
Still to come on the story, Oregon and Penn State football will play this weekend for the Big Ten Championship. And we're headed into the KGW Vault to show you the last time the two teams faced off nearly 30 years ago. That's next when the story returns. The KGW Great Toy Drive is here, and there are less than 2 weeks left to give. Just head to kgw.com/toy to donate. And if you give this week, Oregon Corrections Enterprises will double your donation amount for double the toys, up to $5,000. You can also donate in person at 2 different collection events that we have going on this weekend. We're going to be at the Happy Valley Fred Meyer this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. or donate a toy at the Portland Holiday Brew Fest and receive an extra drink ticket. Even more incentive for you there. We'll be there all weekend at Pioneer Courthouse Square. You can help bring a little joy to local families this holiday season. Well, Indianapolis is getting ready for the clash between the #1 Oregon Ducks and the third-ranked Penn State Nittany Lions for the Big Ten Championship. And Indianapolis is also getting ready for Orlando Sanchez, who's headed there to bring you all the hype and the highlights. I'm not sure what Indianapolis should be more excited for. Look for Orlando live from Lucas Oil Stadium starting tomorrow morning on Sunrise, and then on Saturday for all of the pre- and post-game action. This is going to be the 5th all-time matchup between Oregon and Penn State on the gridiron. The Ducks are 1-3 against the Nittany Lions. Their first meeting was in 1960, and they last played each other nearly 30 years ago in what's called the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl. So let's take you back a little bit here. January 2nd, 1995 in Pasadena, California. Pac-10 champion Oregon against undefeated Big Ten champs Penn State. And as you're watching, the game could not have started much worse for the Ducks as Penn State took their first play from scrimmage, 83 yards for the touchdown. But the game was close at half. That pass out to the flat there from Oregon, getting things close, with Penn State up 14-7. Near the end of the third quarter, the Ducks capitalized on a Penn State turnover, getting great field position and scoring to tie the game at 14. It looked like we could have something going here. But then on the ensuing kickoff, after scoring to tie it just over there over the pylon, Penn State took it 72 yards deep into Duck territory, and the Nittany Lions then scored on that possession and never looked back. Final score, 38-20 Penn State, who finished their entire season without a single loss. I like that uniform matchup too, the gold and the green and the white, and it always looks really crisp. I hope to see that this weekend. The Nittany Lions team featured quarterback Kerry Collins, who went on to play 17 seasons in the NFL, as well as wide receiver Bobby Ingram, who enjoyed a long NFL career as well, including 8 seasons up in Seattle with the Seahawks. On the Oregon side, the loss marked the end of the Rich Brooks era, whose 18th and final season as head coach came to an end. So back to the present now. The Big Ten Championship game is Saturday night, rematch of these two teams from many years ago. Make sure to catch the late news Saturday here on KGW for a recap from Orlando Sanchez, right from Indianapolis. That is the end of our show. Thank you for watching. For those of you watching live on TV tonight, the good stuff is coming right up your way next. And for the rest of you watching online, don't forget that you can stream the story on your schedule. Download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. And we won't have a show tomorrow night because we'll be airing Seattle Kraken hockey right here on KGW, but we're back on Monday at 6:30. See you then.